Hello, everybody that's watching us. I love it. I love it. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And this podcast is a little different for me because oftentimes I'm asked to come on and just talk about faith centered things. But this is my first podcast where we are exclusively dealing with relationships and marriage. So I'm excited to be here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Mhm. Yeah. So absolutely. First of all, again, thank you to Lucille and Pata for having me on your platform. I'm always humbled and honored when I have the opportunity to speak to other people's communities through their platform. So thank you for that. Just a side note, a little bit about me. Faith Over Fear Biblical Life Coaching has been live for about a little over a year now. It was birthed out of a place where I went through a very difficult and dark medical season that took me through all types of highs and lows. But ultimately, God had to work on me so that I could become the coach that is sitting in front of you today. And so, in my work, a lot of times, because I do coach exclusively women, we always talk about relationships. This past February, we talked about what's love got to do with it, the faith edition. And we talked about if you run your relationship through God's definition of love that is found in Corinthians, would you still stay? Right. And so I worked with women and we unpacked this is God's definition. Now, does this line up with what you're seeing over here? And if so, if not, are you still going to stay? And one of the things that we talked about is the dangers of dating someone's potential. And you may be saying, what does that even mean? Well, a lot of times what we do is we sign up for what we think the person will become or who they might be and not actually who they are today. And that is not the way to approach it. Yes, people can change, but you cannot change anyone. That's a job for Jesus. I'm going to say that again. You cannot change anyone. That is a job for Jesus. And so when we enter relationships with the thought of 5 years from now, they'll clean up their credit or they got baby mama drama and, we'll work all that out once we go down the aisle. Or I know they hop from job to job, but when we get married, I'm going to find them a job. No, no, no. None of that might happen. It may, but it may not. You can't change them. That's a job for Jesus. And so when we are entering relationships, we have to be sure, are you okay if this person, if this is as good as it gets for 20 years, this might be the mountaintop, this might be the pinnacle. Are you okay with that? And that's what you need to enter into a covenant understanding, not what you wish somebody to be. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it is. Like, and it's I've been married 15 years, but I've been with my husband. It'll be 22 years, I think it is this year. So we got together in our 20s. So in that age range, you are still trying to figure out who you're going to be, what to become. And so in those years, sometimes we do end up dating the potential, but you still need to be clear about the core attributes of this person. Like, if they've always been a liar, I mean, they may lie in the marriage. That's a job for Jesus. Like, you can't stop that. If they've always been bad with finances, that's not going to magically change just because you put a piece of paper in between the two of you. That's not how that works. So when I hear from women and they say, "I thought he would change." Why? Because a piece of paper was there, because you got on a white dress and he put a tux on? No. These are things that you need to have conversations about before you go down the aisle, or before you decide, I even want to get engaged. What does it serve you to be engaged to a person and spend all this money and have all these things for someone that you knew they were this way before you married them? That's a job for Jesus. Mm-mm. Yes. Absolutely. And sometimes, and look, this might step on some toes, spoiler alert, this may step on some toes, but a lot of times as women, our timeline for our life and God's timeline very rarely line up, right? And so when we feel like we are running out of time, when we feel like God has forgotten us, we've watched everybody else get a ring or go down the aisle, we tend to settle. Like, I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, we know that we're signing up for a fairy tale. We know that these attributes of this person have always been there, but it's like, well, it's better than me being by myself. No, it's not. No, if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. So really what you need to do is take it to God, ask him to work on you, work on the person, and to be able to have the right person come into your life, even if it takes 5 years longer than you had in mind. Yes. They don't say that, they don't use those words, but ultimately that is what you're doing when you sign up for that. But I do think there are a lot of women that I have heard from that say, I don't want to be alone. I'm scared to be alone. I don't want to be by myself. I'd rather have 20% of this than 80% of nothing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like sometimes people, especially as we get into a certain age, our biological clock starts to tick. And then people say, well, there's nothing out here anyway. This is as good as it gets. And sometimes we go into a space of, well, they picked me, because a lot of women really want to be chosen. We have a natural desire for us to be chosen. And so when a man chooses you, sometimes you just go with the man just because they chose you, but you don't talk to God about it. You don't ask him anything that you really should. You don't dive into those difficult conversations. And as life continues to show you things, you need to be real clear about who that person is going to be. It's fine when it's summertime and you're tipping through the tulips and everything is fine in life, but when sickness hits, when grief comes, when children come, when the money gets funny and you have more bills than money, all those different things, is this the person that you want by your side just because they chose you? Mhm. Right. Yeah. For sure, and that's our natural desire as women, and that's sort of the natural flow of things is that a man chooses us. There's a lot of controversy about would you ever propose to a man, and I'm not a advocate for that, but if that works for you, so be it. But ultimately, sometimes we do settle for people just because they picked us. Especially if you're in a later age in life and you feel like time is running out for you. Sometimes we do settle for things just to say, I got a husband or I got a man too, because we don't want our whole life to go by and not find that person. I think it's a lot of different things. I think one, yes, we're scared of having the difficult conversations because we don't know what's on the other side of that, right? But also, sometimes people don't even think you should have the conversation. A lot of times, people wait until they are married to talk about, do you want to have kids? What's your credit score? What are your goals? Who do you want to be 5 years from now with me? And independent of me, right? Because I'm still, and catch this, ladies, if you're out there too, you cannot lose yourself just because you're in the marriage. You are still you, right? A wife is a role. That's right, clock it. A wife is a role that you play. A mother is a role that you play, right? If all those roles went away, who are you? Who are you? Right? Because a lot of times those roles change, they may even fade. So who do you become? Who are you left with if all those roles go away? So you have to have some goals and aspirations independently as well. It could be something as simple as I want to read 100 books this year. Something that still defines you outside of the marriage. Yeah, hats. Yes, yeah. Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, well, this is don't put me off the podcast now, y'all. But I really think the first conversation you have to have before you have it with your spouse is with yourself. And this is what I say to a lot of women, did you pray to have the posture of a wife before you said yes to an engagement? Did you pray? Like, let's be honest. Like, as I'll be honest, I did not. I was, in my 20s, we were dating. He said, do you want to do this? I said, yes, that's off we go. Now, yes, we did have marriage counseling and all those other things, but I never prayed beforehand. God, give me the posture, give me the mind, give me the heart to become a wife, or to give me, I'm sure husbands, to become a husband. Like, make me right. And then we're so focused on what the other person is doing or isn't doing. But did you ever ask God to fix you, to make you right, to be a wife before you go down the aisle? Because being a girlfriend and being a wife have totally different, and you all been in it almost my whole life. You know what I'm saying? Like, really. So, it takes a different type of mind frame, a different type of heart, a different type of understanding, grace, mercy, all of those things, sacrificing. So you have to have that conversation with yourself. A lot of times we get caught up in the dresses and the honeymoons and all these things that social media shows us is so pretty and cute. But at the end of the day, you have to sit in the marriage. And so as first we need to start with us and say, God, work on me. Before we go down the aisle, work on me. Make me what you need me to be. Make sure you're reading over what God's definition of love is. It's patient, it's kind, it doesn't keep record of all those things. Are you ready to do that? It never gives up. Like, are you ready for those things? So work on you first. That's where you start. And then when you've got yourself together and God, send some people your way, that's when you start to have those hard conversations. Sometimes dating is important, not just dating, but how you date. So if every date you are on, you go to the movies, you can't talk. There's no opportunity for that, or you're doing some type of activity where it might be fun, but you don't get an opportunity to converse. And sometimes you need to make sure when you're dating, especially in an age, when I was dating, cell phones were just kind of becoming, texting was just sort of becoming a thing. And we really didn't have social media that much back then. So now everything is social media, is swiping, it's texting. And so we don't communicate the way we used to, right? And I'm sure you ladies, when you were dating, it was just a landline phone and that was it, right? And you might have had to ask permission to speak to. Remember, guys used to have to call and ask, "Hello, may I speak to so and so?" You know, so that's really you need to reserve time to have those hard conversations and to ask that person everything about where their mind is and where they desire to be. Mhm. Yeah, and I said love keeps no record of wrongs now, so listen, you know, it was not the right thing to do. The Bible also tells us, "Do not let the sun go down on your anger," so receive that as well, right? And look, we're not perfect. Yes, there's been days I didn't feel like speaking to my husband, or I didn't speak, or we may have hung up the phone a little, harder than we normally would. That's a part of life. But if you are really in it the way God is commanding us, if you will, to be in it, then you need to make sure that you can deal with your partner in all seasons. And that they are ready to deal with you in all seasons. So you could have money this month, and next year or next month you not have money. And your kids, you may aspire to have children, you could have them, but what if they come with special needs? Are you all prepared for that? Or your parents start to pass away, or your caretaker, all these different seasons. Are you going to face life with that person and still be able to keep God's biblical principles of love? Because that's the other thing. We don't these seasons of life are not an excuse for us to not keep God's commandment when it comes to love. You still have to be patient. You still have to be kind. You still cannot let the sun go down in your anger. No matter how tired, burnt out, exhausted you may be, God still calls us to keep his principles. So is that one you could do that with? Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that is key because that whole you may not wake up tomorrow is so true. Like I will tell you all, back in December, my mother-in-law passed away. And the crazy thing about this was a lot of crazy things, but the thing about this is when I talk about here today, gone tomorrow, it was a true situation with that. We had spoken to her the night before she passed. She was laughing and joking. Everything was fine. She was on the phone with my daughter. They were telling jokes to each other. She had no health problems. 3 a.m. She the next, in the middle of the night, she had a headache, which ended up being a stroke and a brain aneurysm that ruptured and she passed away. She was gone 12 hours later. So when we talk about the last conversations that we have, especially before we go to bed or we leave the house, the next moment is not promised. Somebody had a whole to-do list last night, didn't wake up today to do any of that. So even if there is conflict, you still want to end the day with grace and mercy, just like you said, Pata. It doesn't mean all your feelings might not be resolved. You might still have some residual things, but you want to be clear. Hey, this was not the best day that we had today. I'm still in my feelings a little bit, but I want to let you know I love you, and we're just going to go to bed. Or you have a disagreement, somebody has to leave the house. Listen, I just want you to know I love you and be safe. We'll talk about it later. But tomorrow really is not promised. So you need to be real clear about all of these conversations. You want to close them with intention, especially when you all separate. Look, you were on the south side of heaven. That's what you're talking about. You on the south side of heaven. That's where you gonna be when we get up there. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. But you have to remember, and if you need conviction behind it, like how many times do you think God gets upset with us? Right? And so he still forgives us every day. That's what that grace and mercy is for. So if God can forgive us for all the things that we do that disappoint him and probably make him angry, we know he's a jealous God as well. And he has to compete with all these other things in our lives. And he still forgives us and gives us grace and mercy. Then if our heart posture is that of Christ, then we have to do the same. That's how we model it. Mhm. Woo! How much time do we have? No, I don't. Well, I would say number one on the list is if they do not have a relationship, and I want you to hear me clearly. If they do not have a relationship with God the Father, and they do not acknowledge and accept that Jesus is their Lord and Savior, and that's also what you believe, then you cannot, I know people say I have different religions, but no, you cannot be unevenly yoked. You just cannot. Something I hear a lot with women now is people talking about, I believe in the universe. What is that? I don't know what that is, but that is not God. That is not Jesus. You need to be really clear on your religion matching. And if you are Christ led, then your partner needs to be Christ led. Keep in mind that the enemy came for Adam and Eve in the very first part of the Bible. Cain and Abel were not born. Their children, if you don't know that story, they were not born. It was just Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and then the snake came, which means if the enemy attacked marriage that soon in the Bible, I mean, there were many things he could have attacked. He could have attacked Adam when he was by himself, and it could attack Eve while she was by herself somewhere. But the way he did it to pit them against each other means that when you enter into that marriage covenant, it is now a higher level of spiritual warfare. That's how important marriage is to God. So you cannot go into that unequally yoked. How are you going to fight the attacks of the enemy if you're not on the same page? So that would be my number one thing. Not being on the same page as for children is another one. Children, if you want kids and he doesn't, that's not going to work out. Somebody's going to end up settling, and that's probably not going to work out. And a lot of times, sometimes that's people leave or they have affairs and just to have children. I've heard, those stories before. You need to be clear, but also what happens if we try to have children and it doesn't work out, or it doesn't work out the way we intended? Are we enough for each other? Is that okay? So you need to have those conversations. Three, finances is a huge one. If you know you've got bankruptcies and repossessions and child support that you owe, taxes, you need to be honest. That doesn't mean the person's going to leave you. Maybe you all can have a plan to clean that up together, but you need to be very honest and transparent about your finances. And lastly, your goals. What do you want to do? Are you a homebody? You need to say that now. Or are you a person that likes to travel? You need to say that now. If you like to go out every weekend, if you like to buy, expensive things, if you like a sort of luxury lifestyle, whatever that is that you are now and where you aspire to be honest about that. Because some people, even things as simple as buying a house, right? You'll have people who get married and you hear buy a home, but some people don't want to do that. Some people want to rent forever. They don't want the maintenance with snow removal and lawn and things like that. That can even cause a conflict, y'all. So have the conversations about those four things that are really key, and then go from there. And then my last thing, which people don't usually like to talk about, what do you want to do when you die? Because I've seen people have conflicts about that. I want to be cremated. Well, I don't want you to be cremated. I want to come and visit you somewhere. I don't want your ashes around here. Like, it sounds trivial, but also, your wishes when you come to those end of life, what do you want? Or at least start to have those conversations. Because as I said a few minutes ago, life is not promised to any of us. So those would be the things I really say you have to lock in and have conversations about. That was my third. Hmm. What? Well, and that's an important one too. I kind of was thinking, in the times that we're in, you probably have figured that out already. That's something that we tend to spend time on is, our sexual preferences, but that is important as well. If you are into things that he's not into and vice versa, or he desires to get married and then do things, under the covenant of marriage, which you shouldn't do, but I'm not here to, to condemn you. I'm just giving you the practical tips. But yes, those are conversations if you haven't had those already. But I notice more people spend time on things like that because they feel like the way to keep a man, especially, is to please him, or to keep a woman is to please her. And I hear people that go in these gas stations and they take all these little pills, and they have these little fantasy boxes and things like that. And a lot of people, y'all laughing at, I'm serious. Look, a lot of people spend a lot of time. Listen, there are pills in the gas station. Listen, this is not a promotion for this, but yes, there are pills in gas stations. You when you go up, you see them. If you go in the gas station, you'll see them right there at the counter, and that's what they are made for. They are for intimate enhancing and things like that. So people tend to spend a lot of time on stuff like that because they think that is core to keeping the relationship when ultimately it's not about that in the long run. So that's why I didn't mention that. But yes, if that's not something you've talked about, or if you are saving yourself for marriage, which is always, admirable and things like that. Yes, have those conversations so that you can be ready for that going into the marriage. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Right, right, and you're right, and also, what are the different types of intimacy, that you like? Because, you may like something, but he doesn't like to do that, or vice versa, then what happens, you know? But then also, have the conversations about what happens when that is not the priority anymore, kids come, and then, you could have health challenges where that's just not really on the agenda anymore, and what does that mean? You still have to find ways to maintain your intimacy, whether that's, cuddling or snuggling or whatever that looks like for you. But that's why I say you have to be ready for this person in all seasons of life, not when it's just everything is fine and happy, but all seasons of all seasons of life, okay? These ladies on here have not made it 40 years without seeing their partners in all seasons of life, and guess what? Life is not finished yet, you know? My grandmother had the saying, "If you live long enough, you will see these things." So life is not finished yet, and so you need to be knowing this person can be with you in all seasons. I remember I was very, very ill in 2024, which I alluded to in the beginning. And my husband really had to take care of me, but also step up and be Mr. Mom, Mr. Dad, if you will, right? He was doing everything, all the cleaning, taking care of our child, taking care of me, all the grocery shopping, taking her to her after school activities. I mean, all the things. And that hit us out of nowhere. I didn't have any history of medical issues, and that went on for months and months and months. Is that someone that you think can care for you in those difficult seasons? Or, his mother passed away, and now I am walking him through grief. So, suddenly we didn't have time to prepare, and now we're funeral planning and all these things. Are you ready to walk through life with that person? Or before we had our daughter, we lost a son. Are you ready to walk through that type of season, with your partner? So, I'm just sharing some of the things in my life because I'm always transparent, but it's not always going to be happiness. It's not always going to be going on trips and living your best life, as we say. Life is going to, show us some things. And if you don't think that's a person that can support you, and you don't think also that you can support them the way they need in all seasons, like we said, Pat, all seasons, they're just not for you, or at least not to that person. Well, you know what though? You know what though? You never know what they can do till they have to do it. I'm be honest with you because I kind of thought that too, because I'm always the one that cleans and cooks and everything. But a lot of times that's us babying them a little bit. We got to push them a little bit to do some things too. And so when he was able to rise to the occasion. But I would have never known that though if I hadn't really gotten sick. I mean, he was always, what do you need help with? What do you want me to do? But to be able to run that whole thing, making lunch in the morning and all, I said, oh, you got this. You got this. So when I got better, some things I never took back. I'm like, you got this. You can do it. You want it better than me in some ways, go for it. Mhm. Yeah. Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right, and then you say, that show "Who Did I Marry?" Well, you married, you just didn't ask the right questions, but this is who you married. And then, a lot of times ignorance is bliss. It's like if I don't ask the question, then I don't have to deal with the answer. But, that's part of it is, as women, we cannot live in these fairy tales in our minds about people. And as men, you cannot either. You need to ask the hard questions. The other reason that I say always ask questions is when we talk about the dating potential, you have to know that the enemy listens to your prayers too. And this is something people don't really think about. But okay, I'm a single woman and I'm praying for a marriage. I'm praying for a husband, right? Well, the enemy listens to your prayers too. Just like we know the enemy quoted scripture back in Jesus before he went to the cross. You have to remember, if you don't know the story of Lucifer, he used to be an angel. He was cast out of heaven, and he was the angel that was over worship. When he left heaven, he took a third of the angels with him, and that becomes the demons that we have here with us today that we deal with. And so Satan is not omnipresent like God. He can't be everywhere at the same time. But of course, demons and things listen to us and listen to our heart's desires, just like God is listening. So let's say I'm a single woman and I'm praying for a husband, and then let's say a week later I meet this guy at the coffee shop. Girl, he is everything I prayed for. He is tall, dark, handsome. He's got a little swag. He's got a little charisma. He's taking me out on these dates at these places that I post on social media that I love to go to. I mean, we are doing the thing, right? Then, we get together and we move in together. I haven't asked him anything because he's checked all the boxes that I have seen thus far, and so we move in together, start a life together. Maybe we get married, things like that. But then you find out, a year from now that, when you want to buy your house, he can't get it with you because he's already had, two foreclosures. And, when you go to have children and you go to do all these things, now you find out, wait, you're already paying child support for a child that's 16 or you just didn't tell me about because they're older. And, you're like, but God, wait, I thought I prayed for a husband. I thought you sent me this person. And God would say, but did you ask me if that was the person? Because that's how we end up dating and going in cycles with the wrong people, because the enemy listens to you as well. The enemy will send people to you trying to get to convince you that this is the right person. But remember, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So if any of those things begin to start happening in your relationship, it was not sent by God. This is also how we end up in things like jobs that are the same wrong jobs for us. You get a job and it seems like it's great, but now the hours are too much. They're short staffed. The people don't like you. The supervisor's out to get you. And you're like, how do I keep getting these jobs? Because the enemy also listens to your heart's desire and he will flirt with you with potential and with all these things that look like they are God sent, but they are not. So you always have to say and be really intentional. God, is this person sent from you? Was this job sent from you? Was this opportunity, did it come from you? Because God will show up and he will answer and he will make it clear. And if he don't tell you yes, you need to swipe the other way and keep it moving. But that is something people forget about. The enemy is not, he's playing in our love lives, he's playing in our jobs, he's playing in all aspects of our lives. So he doesn't want you to get to that happy place. So you've know it's all spiritual, and he will do things like that to play in your relationships. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo! Mm, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that listen, those are all important things to talk about. Like if you're a neat freak, you gotta call that out and say, hey, I like a certain because some people are you like this, Lucille, where you have to have order and things have to be placed a certain way. Is that how you are? Yeah, okay. Organization. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what are you doing? Hang it up. Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you, this is not don't do this, but this is what my husband was messy. He's gotten a lot better now, but his thing would he would never hang the towel up. So every time I like he would get dressed and he would get out the shower and just like set the towel over here somewhere. And by the time I would get home and see the towel, it would be all like, not fresh. So I would just start putting all the towels in the laundry basket till finally it was no towels. And he was like, what I'm gonna dry off with? I don't know, because the towels are not clean. I don't know. I guess you'll need to air dry. Go sit by the fan. After a few weeks of that, he started hanging his towel up. Another one he doesn't like to do is, and these are things he knows too, Lucia. Put the top on the toothpaste. So then I started buying the toothpaste one that the flap. All you gotta do is clip the little flap. Just flap it. Still don't do it. You know what I do? Throw the toothpaste away. Throw it away. And I would just keep my own toothpaste so that I wouldn't tell him I had my own toothpaste. Again, don't try this at home. These are just things that I yeah, yeah, right. So then suddenly he said, "No, I have any toothpaste." I said, "Well, you kept leaving it open. It would get, disgusting. I had to throw it away." So now he closes up the toothpaste and we have a shared toothpaste tube. But it took us a little while to get there. So, oh no. You can. Yes. Yeah. God bless you. Just, on your journey. There you go. There you go. Yeah. 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 Yeah, there you go. Now I will tell you what, we do have separate comforters. We have separate now we sleep in the same bed, but we have separate comforters because he said that I always take the covers and the comforters, and he's always cold. But then if I have a hot flash in the night, then I don't want the comforter, and I just throw everything, whatever. So we have like a shared comforter, but then he has his own too, because that way he says he knows he's warm all night. Now, sometimes you have to do things like that too in different seasons. We didn't start that way, but as things change and your bodies change and what's comfortable, you have to have continue to have those conversations too. So I think, Lucille, even when we're talking about the conversations before marriage, you have got to keep communicating, because the person I was when we got married in our 20s, now I'm in my 40s, I'm a completely different person. So, we have to continue to have those conversations about what works for me, what doesn't, what I need, and what isn't as important as it used to be 10 or 20 years ago. Okay. Right, go to sleep, right. Sleep, because who will you all be if you're just trying to subscribe to this, "We have to share the bed," but we're exhausted, we're sleep deprived, now we're biting each other's heads, like, that's not gonna work. You have to do what is best for you. You have to do that. Yeah, like, yeah, 'cause guess what? It doesn't say in the Bible you have to have the same toothpaste or you have to have the same bed. It doesn't say that. That's not part of God's definition. So whatever you need to do that works for you, that's what you need to do. And when we talk about having those conversations throughout marriage, you have to be clear who you are becoming too, because you cannot expect your partner to meet your needs and to meet your wants, but you don't really know what they are yourself and can't communicate them. So sometimes you have to sit with yourself and have some self reflection, say, who am I becoming? Who am I now that I wasn't, 5 years ago? Or, what is this season? What is important to me in this season? And also have your partner do that. And that's where you share those things. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Is the challenge. Yes, is the challenge. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. So I think that you have to remember that, we talk about life as sort of a display that you're on, right? And if you're on display every day, whether it's as a mom, as a wife, if it's a career person, your partner is with you and is partnering with you in this display. But if you're putting on a show, if you will, right, it shouldn't be for your partner. They should be involved in that with you. They're not your audience in that way, so to speak. And so sometimes we wear masks, right? Like almost like we're in a play and we're not really honest with our partner about who we are. Sometimes we'll show the world things about ourselves and we don't even show them to our partner. So you always want to remember it's us together in all things. Even if there's a problem, we're fighting it together. If we need to put a mask on, then we got to put that on together and go out into the world. But I shouldn't be showing the world a part of me that I don't show my spouse. And so we really have to attack everything together. I know that's something I had to grow into is we're fighting the problem together, but we're not fighting each other. If I can show this part of me to other people and be vulnerable with other people outside the home, if they're my audience there, then I should be able to show you that same part of me in the house as well. So it really just goes back to, showing yourself and being vulnerable and realizing that you really are a team. When the Bible says you become as one, if something bad happens, you're fighting that together, but you're not fighting each other. It- yeah. Why are we right? Right. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Correct. And that's hard. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's for women that, especially if you've been in a season of singleness for a long time, and you have that I can do bad all by myself, or I don't need a man, I want a man mentality, and you're used to doing everything. When you finally do get into a relationship, a lot of times we bring that masculine energy into the relationship, and it may be unintentional, but it's always like a pocket check, or a check of, I'm independent, I'm this strong independent woman too. And it may not even be something you're conscious about, like you said, Pastor, but other people can notice it. And so it's yes, as wives, we are called to submit. That does not mean that you don't have a voice or you don't have a say, but you do let the husband have his rightful place to lead your household. Which also, if you don't have a man that can lead and you're not a woman that can submit, neither of you are ready for marriage. Yes. 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 Yeah. You gotta get yeah. And we yeah. Right, right. Why would you say that? Exactly. Why would you say that? Or why would that why is that the stance that you feel like you want to take? Why is that what you feel like you want to say? You're absolutely right. Right. He does. Yes. And but I would typically, when I see that, because I think it's a cultural thing, and this is something that we talk about a little bit in with other coaches. But in other cultures that are not African American, we don't see that. We don't hear that as much from women. Actually, they're not. They don't sort of have that mentality to think. Well, I don't need a man, and I got my own money. All of us probably were told, you keep a little piece of money on the side in case something goes wrong. They're not raised that way. I'm saying, like, they're not raised to have the backup plan. Like, the man is the plan, point blank, period. They don't plan for disaster or feel like they have to assert themselves in any kind of way. But as African American women, a lot of times that's how we were raised or what has been in our culture because of a lot of our relationships and how they have happened, right? Or the failing of, or we know, Uncle Joe, he had a family on this side and family on that side. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in other cultures. It absolutely does. But it's almost like that institutionalized sort of trauma that we have from relationships is passed down to our women generationally. And so it's always like you got to have a little piece of money. You got to tell them you don't need them. You can leave and we can come get your stuff today. But that's really not how it is. If I'm really trusting God with this person, obviously things can happen. But if I'm trusting God with this person and I say I'm gonna be all in and I'm gonna do all these things the Bible says, then there can't be room for that part. It can't be room for that. I can do it myself and I don't really need you. I'm in this because I want to be, and I got this over here. If you don't want to be with me, I can take care. We have to let that go. That's pride. And we have to let that go. We have to really submit and say, I'm in it for the long haul and I'm committed to it, and we're going to do this thing together. Is not even an I anymore. There's no I in team anyway. Oh boy. I love it. I love it. And if my husband was here, I would ask him. He's in the yard right now working though, but he has this alarm clock that goes off on his phone every day at 11 a.m. and it just says wife check. And no matter what he's doing at 11 a.m., he checks on me. Now I could be working, he'll send me a text message. He could be working, he'll send me a text message, or he'll call me, or if we're together, he'll say, "Oh, wife check." And so that's his little intentional time every 15 at 11 o'clock for 15 minutes to just check on me and see how I'm doing. And then what I typically do is at the end of the day, before we're getting ready to go to bed after dinner, I'll say, is there anything that you want me to know today that you didn't share with me already? It could be anything. It could be something you saw on TV, or it could be I had a really bad day at work, or you hurt my feelings earlier. But I want to give him that space to tell me whatever it is. That space is dedicated for him, and he dedicates space for me. And so when we talk about intentionality, a lot of times we say, "Oh, we're so busy." We can't do these things. No, if you want to, you will. If you want to, you will. You make space for everything else that's important to you. If it's important to you, be intentional, make space to check in on your partner and make space to check in on yourself. Especially as women, we talked about the roles and the hats that we play. Sometimes we're wearing 3, 4 hats at a time. Make time to check in on yourself. How are you doing? And make sure you can convey if you need help, if you're struggling, if you feel like you're falling into a dark place, that sometimes you can when we're wearing so many things, that you can get the help you need from your partner or others as well. Yeah, yeah, and it's simple. It's simple. Yep, yep. Yeah, yes. Right. Absolutely. Yes. Right, exactly. Right, and that's you're pouring into me because that is something these are things that we're still working on because, we both work full time. We have an 8-year-old. I'm an entrepreneur as well. And then life is just busy, right? There's just so many things going on. And so we're trying to honor, at least a date night or two a month. But we schedule them. So like it's the same way I'm scheduling doctor's appointments and things like that. I'm like, okay, well, and so I know some people say, well, I don't have right. Some people say, "Well, I don't have a sitter." Okay, well, see if you can find one, or maybe do something where your child can go to one portion and you guys can go to another portion. Even if it's a park and they play on the playground and you can keep an eye on them, but you guys sit and talk for 20 or 30 minutes, but something and get out of the house. Now, this is the one I had to learn. Get out of the house. The date night is not cannot always be in the house. You cannot just be watching a movie. Get out the house. You need to be outside, do something fun, be in the fresh air, be social, but get out of the house. When you're in the house, a lot of times you're gonna fall asleep. You're gonna just get on your phone and scroll. Somebody else is gonna call you. Get out of the house and make time for you all. And yes, even with the intimacy, we have had to schedule that. There is no shame in that. We have done that. Sometimes we still have to do that. So there's nothing wrong with that. It might happen when the date night is, or it might be some separate times, but get that on the calendar too. And even like I said, intimacy looks different for everybody. So if it's not, the way in a traditional sense, then cuddle, then snuggle, then do something with some candles or get in the bathtub. That all the different things that you can do, but you still want to remain connected. So those are things even I do now, and I'm in my 40s, but we got to do what we got to do. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. I would probably say the question to ask is, how can I serve you today? Because we are called to serve one another. We know that Jesus, when he was here, he served. And that's why it's important to know your word, not just to know it just because it is the Bible, but really the things that Jesus did while he was here really modeled how we are supposed to be for one another. And so he served those who liked him and even those that didn't. And so we really are, called to serve one another, even in marriage. So the question, how can I serve you today? When you hear it, it's like, well, I don't want to serve him, but that is what you're called to do. And that doesn't mean he's going to say, I need you to go do 50 loads of laundry, but he may say, hey, I have a meeting coming up, in a couple days, and I didn't have a chance to take it to my stuff to the dry cleaners. Can you take it for me? Or sometimes I might say to my husband, I need you to listen to me and not give me advice. I just need you to hear me. That's how you can serve me today. I just need to vent, but I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to hear me. Or I need 15 minutes just to do nothing. Like I don't want the kids talking to me, nothing. Or I need to go for a walk. My husband, so he's the person that I give him space when he comes home from work. He sits in the car for like 20 minutes because he has a longer commute. He works 12-hour shifts, excuse me. And so sometimes he just needs to decompress a little bit more when he comes home. It's nothing wrong with that. But ask the person, how can I serve you today? And different things like that. And then when you're having disagreements and arguments, one that I always say is, if they're not understanding you, instead of saying, you're not listening, no, they are listening, they're participating. They're not understanding, but they are listening, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be disagreeing. So ask them, how can I make this clearer for you so that you can understand me? How can I make this clearer? What can I say or do so to get you to understand what I'm saying a little bit more? So those would be the questions I would ask. And the last thing I want to add to Lucille is when we talk about our childhoods and how that impacts our marriages, if you think back to your own childhoods, your approach to marriage a lot of times has to deal with, we talked about this, how you were raised, those generational things that were passed down to you. And if you have children, whatever your marriage is and how you are modeling that, your children see. So if you have bad habits now where you're, fighting or you're arguing or you don't make space for date nights or, you don't cuddle or kiss or hug in front of your kids, realize that that's what your children are seeing. And when they go out to seek a partner, they are going to base it off of what they saw in the house. So it is important that you are modeling those good behaviors, that you are being Christ-like when it comes to your marriage. And that means sometimes showing the good and the bad. Sometimes my husband and I have disagreed in a healthy way in front of our daughter because I don't want her to think that marriage is always going to be tipping through the tulips. It's not. But she also sees us hug, us kiss, to say it's romance time. That's her little thing that she says. But those are healthy things that our children need to see so they can find healthy partners as well. Absolutely. So the easiest way and the fastest way is social media. I am Faith Over Fear Biblical Life Coaching on all social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm on all those platforms. Again, Faith Over Fear Biblical Life Coaching. If you want to connect with me a little bit more as far as one-on-one coaching or speaking engagement, something like that, you can always click the links in the bio of any of those social media platforms, or you can email me at faithoverfearsis@gmail.com, and you can connect with me directly that way. I do. I do. The Heaven Team. I got it right here. So this was and this is what I always say to people, and I know that's not the part of this podcast, but when you really go through things, is God is not just trying to make you, be tortured and make you angry. He's always up to something. So I came out of that really difficult medical season I talked about. I became certified as a biblical life coach, started Faith Over Fear. And then a few months after that, God, led me to become a children's book author. So my husband, several years ago, he had an aunt that passed away. And that was the first person that our daughter, she was about 5 at the time, really like knew that had passed away. So when we went to tell her, she said, Mom, do you mean the heaven team came to get her? And we were like, what is the heaven team? And she says, isn't that the group of angels that come and get you and let you get comfortable in heaven when the doctors can't take care of you anymore because you're too sick? And I looked at her and said, well, yeah, I guess that is what happened, but I had never heard of it that way. And I casually mentioned it to someone. They said, you should turn that into a book. I said, I don't know anything about writing a book. Well, I learned something about writing a book. And that is where the Heaven Team was born, a child's guide to love, loss, and heaven. You have our characters here, Skylar and Noah, and it takes us through the journey of loss of Noah's grandmother. And we learn about the Heaven Team, which of course is the group of angels that do let you get comfortable in heaven. And this helps to answer for families the question, how do you explain heaven to a child? Right. So we have this, we have a companion coloring book. We also have books about pet loss because we know that pets are a part of our family. So we also have a Heaven Team's book for pets, along with a pet remembrance journal. All those are available on Amazon. And then just on Juneteenth, about a week ago, we released our newest book, which is called Jesus is My Superhero. And I'm really proud of this one because my daughter co-wrote this. She did a lot of the lead work on this. And see, this is when we talk about modeling. You never know what your kids are picking up. So she's like, Mom, I want to write a book. I said, well, let's do it. So this is the Heaven Team presents Jesus is My Superhero, another fully illustrated book, but this is in comic book style. And we have our same returning characters, Skylar and Noah, and they walk us through why Jesus should be our favorite superhero of all time. So this is our newest release. It's been received so well, just along with the original Heaven Team. All are available on Amazon. That's the easiest way to find us and get it to your homes. Thank you. Oh my goodness. So I had a Bible study for Lenten season. We did the entire 40 days, and we had a lot of women that joined that. So stay tuned. Yes, follow me on social media as we do. People have been asking me to do a series about dealing with difficult people and how to love someone that's difficult. And so I believe God is pushing me into that season. And then also, at the beginning of the year, I had a session for women about prayer boards and different things like that. And so we're going to be doing some check-ins next month also about where are you with those goals that you set. We all start out with these, my year is going to be this, and well, we're halfway through, and what's the year looking like, and how can we get back on track? So yes, I do have some things upcoming, so stay tuned. They're going to be launching in the next week or so. Mm. Yes, yes, yeah, intensive. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And blessings to you all as well. Mm. Bye.